Hey guys, Scott here. Today I want to give a bit of a guide on dealing with getting tunneled in solo queue because it is definitely something that people do not handle very well. And I wanted to kind of give a guide on things that you can kind of control yourself. And again, it's solo queue, so you can't communicate with everybody else. But hopefully over time, people will learn the correct things to do in a tunneling scenario because it should not be as effective as it currently is, at least in regular public matches. So here are a couple of things that you can do to deal with it. Now, if you're the one getting tunneled, that's really easy. Just slap on Decisive Strike and off the record. Basically, perks will cover your ass for all, getting tunneled purposes. If you have off the record, the killer can't wait out borrowed time, and even when they do hit you, you have the Iron Will effect, which makes the second hit much harder to get. If you have Decisive Strike on top of that, if they do manage to hit you, then they have to pick you up. You get another chase from Decisive Strike. You can slap on Unbreakable there in case after all of that they slug you, and Unbreakable is actually even good for helping other people get tunneled too, which I'll get to in a minute. But there's a lot of stuff that you can do personally to prepare for getting tunneled, and if you have an anti-tunnel build like that and the killer decides to tunnel you, the killer's probably just going to lose because you have so many additional layers of protection. Blood Rush is, again, another new amazing perk if you combine that with Sprint Burst or something like that. So there are a lot of really good anti-tunnel perks in the game, and as long as you have a build that is prepared for that, if the killer decides to tunnel you and you're the one that has all these perks, I mean, they're probably just going to straight up lose. They might eventually kill you, but they're going to get no other hooks, and I would consider that a win. So controlling you getting tunneled is a lot easier than controlling other people getting tunneled, and this is the main issue with solo queue. You can't tell people, you can't switch perks mid-match, you might not be prepared for that, they're trying some other build. So how do you deal with other people getting tunneled? The first thing you need to do is recognize whether or not the killer is going to tunnel, and it's usually pretty obvious. Killers that are going to tunnel, you can even tell off of the first hook because they will typically not commit to any chases outside of a radius around the hook, with a few exceptions. If they're like a hillbilly or a blight and can just straight up cross the map in 10 seconds, then they can kind of go wherever and then just come right back once the unhook starts. But for most killers in the game, if they're planning to tunnel, they will hover around a pretty, a 30-meter radius around where the hook is. Not quite proxy camping, but close enough to where when the unhook happens, they will be able to beeline directly back to the hook and finish the person off. So you need to look for that kind of behavior. They'll be kicking gens in the area, kicking pallets in the area. They might hit somebody, but then not commit to a chase. These are all things you need to look out for. It doesn't always mean that they're planning on tunneling. They might have some other thing in the area that they're trying to protect, but that is usually a pretty good sign. Now, obviously, if they blatantly tunneled from first to second hook, once they're on their second hook, you know it's going to happen for the third hook because they want to just finish that person off. But these are things you can look out for before it actually even starts. So when you see that, the correct thing to do in solo queue, and I cannot stress this enough to anybody, people need to learn this. If there is a killer that is going to be tunneling or is relentlessly tunneling, the safest possible place for the person getting tunneled on the entire map is the hook. When they are on the hook, they cannot be tunneled. They are invincible to tunneling. And they just recently buffed it, so you have 70 seconds per hook stage now. That is an insanely long amount of time for the killer to not be doing much of anything. If you have 3 people on gens for 70 seconds, that is almost 3 full generators completed from 0. That is way too much time for one hook state. Now, what will happen here is the killer's going to be patrolling that area, not wanting to go too far away. And once they start getting down very close, maybe 10 seconds left to the second stage, the killer is going to come back to the hook and probably just straight up camp them. Because at that point, they want to commit to the actual second stage. Fine, you won't let me tunnel this guy. I'll at least camp him to second stage, so I at least get my second stage that way. But the thing is, most killers in the game cannot really stop you from one-for-oneing for the hook. One-for-oneing is when you trade your life for the person that's on the hook. Basically, you run up to the hook, the killer hits you. In the cooldown animation, you unhook the person, then you go down. So other than Hillbilly and Bubba, there's 1 or 2 other exceptions. The vast majority of killers can't really stop you from doing a 1-for-1. And 1-for-1s dismantle entirely camping and tunneling pressure if you do it at the last second. If you spend the entire time doing generators up into 69.9 seconds, the killer has lost so much effective time on the game that they're just going to lose. So that's the main suggestion I should give in solo queue about tunneling and getting tunneled. If you know that's going to happen, or you've seen it happen, or you think it's going to happen, leave that teammate on the hook for 69 seconds. Obviously be there in time so they don't go to stage 2, but leave them on the hook the entire time. They cannot be tunneled on the hook. They are literally invincible to it. I can't stress that enough. You can't be tunneled while you're on the hook. So many times there'll be a tunneling killer, and I'll just see a dipshit teammate just run and unhook a guy, and what do you know? The killer tunnels them and downs them in 15 seconds because they don't have protection against it, when there could have been another 50 seconds of everyone doing gens before the exact same scenario just happened. So that is the most important thing. It's leave people on hooks until the absolute last possible second and then get the unhook. Obviously, you need to route it so you're running to the hook and you're not going to get there too late. So I'm not saying work on gens for 69 seconds, maybe do 55 seconds, then get in position to do the unhook. But this is where Unbreakable works really well for helping other people with tunnels as well, because what's probably going to happen is if you 1-for-1 at the very last second and save the person from going stage 2, the killer's going to be very upset about this. They're going to slug you, leave you on the ground, and immediately go for tunneling. They're not even going to hook you. They're just going to go immediately to tunnel that guy again. So in this scenario, that's perfect because you still have 2 other people on gens. You're on the ground recovering with Unbreakable, and by the time the killer downs that person again, gets through, a layer of borrowed time and just one loop or something, we'll say they don't even do well. They go down in 20 seconds. You're back up already. And now we're in the exact same scenario again, where there's another 70 seconds where the killer has to just sit there and make sure that you're not going to get a safe unhook on this person. And during this whole time, now there's 3 people on gens again. Another 70 seconds go by, killer just loses. The game's over. And you can still 1-for-1 the guy in endgame. That's the whole point of all of this, is leaving people on hooks when the killer is tunneling is the best possible thing that you can do. Again, the only exceptions are killers like Hillbilly and Blight that can essentially just teleport across the map immediately. And there's a reason these are probably the first, second, third best killers in the game, because they can do that. Because you can't really stop them from tunneling. And, with like a Billy, for example, you can't even get a safe 1-for-1 if they decide to return to the hook and kind of proxy camp it. So that is the reason those killers are the best killers in the game. But like I said, 95% of other killers cannot really do that. So if you do these strategies, the strength of tunneling goes down so much. Tunneling is only effective when the survivors present the tunneled person to the killer as an option to physically be tunneled. If you deny the killer that option, then the killer will spend so much time just really not doing much of anything, at which point the killer's just going to lose. Yeah, in the end game, that person might end up dying, but I consider, 3 hooks and everyone else out, that is a massive loss for a killer. You absolutely win as a survivor team. And sure, it can suck being the person getting tunneled, but if that's the scenario for me, if I get tunneled the entire game and my entire team leaves because of that fact, I consider that, even though the MMR doesn't consider it, I consider that a win. That's a personal victory if the killer devoted all the resources to me and then they lost because of that. So that's a good thing for survivors. So overall, those are the most important tips. As a player yourself getting tunneled, just simple perks and stuff like that, you can prepare as much as you want. That's not a big deal. But for protecting other people, leaving them on the hook when you see tunneling, or when you've seen it actually happen in the game, or when you predict it's going to happen, is the smartest possible thing you can do. Wait 69 seconds before you unhook them to get maximum amount of time. And I guess the final thing I would say is don't overcommit to unhooking this person. If you see someone on the hook and they're kind of nearing second stage, and you see 2 other teammates on gens and then one of them gets off the gen with the UI, then let that guy go save. That guy's going to go save. If he's not actively getting chased, he's the one that's going to go save. Everyone else just sit on gens. It's going to be okay. Even if they end up getting chased, they're likely getting chased because they're going to the person to unhook them to trade for the 1-for-1. So stay on generators, leave person on hook until the last second. These are the best things you can do to counter tunneling. In solo queue anyway. Obviously, when you're playing with friends, there's infinitely more possibilities, but they don't really apply because, now it's a whole new ball game. So that's it. Those are my tips. Hopefully you can spread those. It seems selfish and it seems boring, but if the killers are going to play in a boring way, you got to combat boring with boring and sit there and do gens, and the killer will lose most of the time. That's it. Thanks for watching. See ya.